Hello viewers, recently on Gran Turismo 7 we had one of the most difficult challenges yet, the Nürburgring Nordschleife lap time challenge in the Honda NSX Type R. This proved to be a very formidable test. The Honda NSX is not an easy car to drive, and you're driving it around the most difficult circuit in the world, the Nordschleife. Now as we jump into this challenge, I was jumping into it quite late, but at the time of starting IOF 17 was at the top of the leaderboards, and this is Igor Fraga, the former world champion on Gran Turismo, and I had to get within 3% of his time, 654.411, in order to achieve a gold. And this was going to prove to be a very, very difficult challenge. There was no doubt about that. What I thought I would first do is do a lap in the car without improving the car at all. You are allowed to tune up the car to some extent, but I felt like, you know what, let's lay down a very basic baseline to see what this car can do without any improvements made. Now, to be honest, I found it very difficult to drive initially, as you can see by this swathe of errors on my first lap, but I found it quite funny because I think this is always a good idea to jump in and kind of just do a lap and see what you get without any practice, without any real knowledge of this car around this track. Coming through the carousel, we exit the carousel with a 4:33 on the clock, and then rounding out this long right-hander, we hit 6:42, which is the world record, and I still had the very long straight to do before hitting the finish line. So that just shows you how much slower I am compared to the world record, and why this was going to be a very, very hard time trial to get a gold on. Eventually across the line in a 7:35, which put me 27,000th in the world and nearly a minute off of the world record. So clearly a lot of work to be done. We were 13.33% away from the number one time. So as I mentioned, here are the requirements for the car: 345 horsepower or less, and it has to weigh 1,050 kilos, a couple of other requirements. So I felt like the main thing, make the car a lot lighter, make the car a bit more rigid as well, and then add the ballast, which is always crucial in setup. Also brakes, I mean there was no requirements about the brakes, so you might as well make them as good as possible. And then change a couple of items on the setup, and I'm not the most experienced setter-upper, so I kind of just went with what I felt was right, and then set the car to 345 horsepower, which is the limit, and then added on the ballast to weigh up to 1,050 kilograms, which was the limit. And then, of course, adding a livery, which hopefully would make the car a lot quicker. I think if you wish hard enough, then maybe it does. So here was my second lap, this one with the improvements to the car. Let's see how we can do. Now 7:35 is the time to beat, which is not exactly a good time, and we should be able to do that quite quickly as long as we get the car around in one piece. And that is the difficulty with this challenge, with this circuit, is that it's such a long track. It's over 12 kilometers, and therefore it's not an easy lap to really hook up. So the first thing I was noticing about this car is that it was very nervous on the front end. It didn't know if it wanted to turn in or not, and then the back end would slide around. It felt like there was loads of weight on the back, so it'd swing around like this, luckily managing to not crash into the wall and destroy the car. But we continue on this middle straight here. This is a bit of a rest, it's a bit of a checkpoint if you like, on the middle section of the Nordschleife, before we then get to the carousel. And you can see there's a big improvement. In the previous lap we come off of there in 4:33, this time 4:16, so quite a fair amount of time saved on this lap compared to the previous. This section here is very fearsome because it's downhill, fast, flat out, and you really do run the limit of the car through that section. Through this right-hander, holding on the brakes a little bit too long, running onto the grass. So an extremely scruffy lap, I think that's fair to say, as we run under the Audi Sport gantry. 6:25 on the clock. Let's take a look at the top speed on this very long straight. As we go under the bridge, down the hill where we're going to reach VMAX, 186 miles an hour was reached there temporarily. Over the curb, and that is going to unsettle the car big time. Managing to keep it away from the wall. As we round out in towards the final corner. As you can see, it's going to be a fairly sizable improvement, but still nowhere near enough to get that goal. 7 minutes 10.9 on the clock. And whilst that was a 25-second improvement, it was only good enough for a bronze time and 7% off the number 1. So what I wanted to do this time around was change the downforce by adding loads of it. So rear wing all the way to the max, and then the front we put up quite high. This would hopefully settle the car down in the corners. We would lose a little bit of speed on the straights, but to be honest, there aren't too many long straights here on this track, and the cornering is far more important around this circuit in general. And quite quickly, I managed to pull away from the Ghost being the 7 minute 10. So any amount I was in front of that was going to be a time saving. As you can see, out of the first sector, maybe 2 seconds or 1.5 seconds saved already, and that's a good sign. Leading into the second sector of the lap, this double right-hander, very difficult to get right, but the car just wanted to turn in a lot more nicely through that turn, which was a bonus. So through here, this is the corner where I made a massive mistake on the first lap. This time around, doing a lot better. 4 minutes 9, 4 minutes 10, coming off the carousel, which again, another couple of seconds taken off. This section here, really nice. I love this part of the track. Probably my favourite section of the circuit. Fast, flowing, undulating. As you drop down the hill on the other side, double left-hander coming up here. Keep the nose in. You don't want to drift too wide in mid-turn. And then throw it into the right-hander here. Coming up to YouTube corner, and hopefully we wouldn't crash for everyone on YouTube to see. Let's take a look. A bit of a slide on the exit, but it's okay. As we go under the gantry on this lap, it was 6:15, so that time was coming down. Let's take a look at the top speed though. As we go under the Bilstein gantry, it's going to be 181. So yes, the downforce has taken off some top speed, about 5 miles an hour. But overall, it's going to be a faster lap. Coming up to the line, not quite sub 7, but not far off, only half a second off. I'm not sure if this Marshall was too impressed. I think a bit of a poker face there. He probably thinks I could do a bit better. But I was 4.5% away from the number 1, so that was coming down. And that was a silver lap time. And this is the part of the time trial process where you then have, well, it's harder and harder to gain time because you're pushing and pushing and pushing. The gains become smaller each time, and as you can see, a montage of crashing. As well, it was just a very frustrating process. Once again, the Marshall here, just not really all that impressed with my driving. Really not at all. I really had to up my game because 7 minutes, okay, it's a good lap, but it's not anywhere near gold. Still 6 seconds away from the required time, and it wasn't really getting much better. As you can see, taking to the grass a fair amount of time, spending more time in the wall than on the circuit. But finally I hooked together a lap where I was going under the gantry, 6:13, and the yellow there is the Ghost. I was maybe about 2 seconds ahead of the Ghost, so this was headed for a sub 7 lap time. All I had to do was not mess up this final sequence of corners, so to go over the curb, almost into the wall, keep it together somehow. And we go into the final corner, thankfully with the car intact, but with a lot of time lost. Is it going to be sub 7? Yes, it is, by 1/10.5. Very close indeed, but still 5 seconds away from a goal time, so we still had lots of time to try and find from somewhere. Decided to add some more parts to the car to change the power delivery, so I added some engine components here, and then I borrowed, should we say, some setups from fellow YouTubers who perhaps know more about it than I do. But the one thing I did notice was acceleration sensitivity. Bringing this one down did help a lot. This car was very sensitive on power, so bringing that down was good. Moving the ballast towards the front as well, so we're just moving the weight of the car more towards the front of the car rather than the back, and I think that I wanted to minimize the rear end swinging around so much. So you can see here it clearly didn't really seem to do that, but that was probably more down to my shocking driving than it was the setup. And again, lots of mistakes. It was a car that just was not easy to drive. Going into the wall, the marshal once again, he didn't even bother looking around. He just knew that he was disappointed in me big time. But we're going to keep trying here, because this first sector, I was admittedly getting quite good at the first sector. But this is kind of normal in time trial, because you keep restarting, and therefore you keep doing the first bit of the lap over and over again. And we got that sorted. Coming down this hill into this triple right-hander, difficult corner this one, really easy, carry too much speed, and I almost do, to be honest, but I think I just about kept that within the limits. Down into one of the slowest corners on the track, and the car actually felt quite nice through there, a little bit twitchy, and that was definitely a characteristic of this Honda NSX. It just felt very nervous, very twitchy to drive, and it never really gave me too much confidence, I would say. Going under the gantry here, 6 minutes 10, that's the fastest I've done it so far. A couple of corners remaining, and I got that a lot better than I did on the previous attempt. So if I can do the final corner correctly, this should be an improvement. As we come up to the line, it's going to be a 6:56.4, puts me 1,373rd in the world, but still a long way off the top. Now, I was checking out how many people actually had a gold, and it was just about 1,000 people in the world. In fact, it was 998 at this point, who were just within the 6:54.411 limit for a gold medal time. But what I wanted to do here was learn from the best. This is a replay of Igor Fraga, the #1 time, and I was going to see if there's anything I could learn from this. Now, the first thing I was noticing was that the setup was definitely different, and given my limited experience with setup, it wasn't easy for me to work out exactly what the setup was, but I could see the gearing was different, because it was coming out of a lot of the corners in sort of one lower gear than what I was. So the car was definitely set up a lot better, but there's no doubt that the driving ability was on another level. That's what makes this challenge and these time trials so hard, is that the best players in the world, even if you're trying to get within 3% of them, sometimes they are so fast that even 3% is a really difficult challenge, and this one is definitely in that category. So through the carousel, I was coming off of here in like 4 minutes, and he's done it in 3:59. Sorry, I was doing it in 4 minutes 10 roughly, and he was doing it in 3:59. So a lot of time being saved on this lap compared to me, and just really able to dance the car through the corners. You might notice the car is almost sliding through a lot of these turns, and here just keeping the car nicely poised on the inside. It's almost drifting it through the turns. It really is beautiful to watch, and just maximising the track limits on pretty much every corner. So let me just tell you just how difficult it is to hook together a lap like this. I mean, someone like Igor Fraga, the best players in the world, they make it look easy, but I can promise you it isn't. Maybe it is for them, but ultimately we shouldn't say that this is an easy game to be fast at. It really isn't. To get to this level that these guys are at, very difficult. Eventually there it is, the 6 minutes 42, such an incredible lap, and for me to get within 3% was proving to be very difficult. I was still 14 seconds slower than that time, and I was even crashing before we get to the start line. On this occasion here, we got a 6:55. I was improving slowly, getting down towards that 6:54. In fact, I was 1 second away. If I could just improve by 1 more second, then I would have a gold medal. Now that goes there, well, the one immediately within me is myself, but then the other one is Igor Fraga, and you can see just how quick it is. It's almost useless to race against it because it gets away so fast, and there's not much you can actually learn from that. But it is quite incredible, just showing you the difference between sort of a mere mortal like me and then a world champion like Igor Fraga. Now, I make a big mistake there, have to restart. was getting better and better and trying to keep closer with Igor, but I felt like actually the real race here wasn't with Igor, it was with myself. I just had to get better than what I had done before, and so I was kind of ignoring Igor's ghost and just trying to beat my own ghost. That was the main priority here. But all I ended up really doing was just smashing into the wall 1,000 times. And here again, making another mistake. And I felt like that was enough for the first day. So we're going to exit. So I woke up the next day at 5:26 in the morning to get this time trial done, as I only had an hour and a half to actually complete it. And if I wanted to get that 9th gold medal rather than a silver, I had 90 minutes to try to shave off 1 second. It sounds easy, but I can promise you it really wasn't. So this first couple of laps, I mean, it was early in the morning, and therefore I was a little bit groggy and I wasn't quite as sharp as I could have been. 6:58. Okay, it's a sub 7, not too bad. We can work from there and try to improve. As you can see, the ghost here makes a mistake. We're going to make a mistake, big mistake, into the wall, but we're going to continue. We're losing maybe about a second there. But you can see, as we head towards the carousel, I managed to catch up with the ghost. So I knew that I was quicker. I knew I could improve. I knew I could do it. But I just had to really string everything together in one lap. And that was proving to be the real difficulty. Because if you really wanted to push this car to the limit, and sometimes go a tiny bit over, then it was really easy to make a big mistake. So 6:56.8, I was getting back down towards my best, but still I needed to shave off over 2 seconds. Now here you can see the ghost again. That's the ghost that we just set, and made a big mistake. I made a big mistake here, going into the wall for the 15 billionth time. And I felt like I had to make another change, and there was a key ingredient that I completely forgot, and that is the wide body. And this is something I didn't initially think to add to the car. You see there, the boys back at the Honda factory doing a good job at widening the NSX. And now we was going to add a different livery, a wide body livery. There we go. Hopefully this one would be a little bit quicker than the previous. And with 41 minutes remaining, I was jumping back in. And the frustrating thing here was that it come up on the screen. So just as a reminder to put the pressure on even more, I only had 41 minutes to do this. It doesn't, I mean, it might sound like a lot, but it's really only about 6 laps or 5 laps to try and get this right. So the pressure was on, but this was my lap. We're going to try and go for it. The wide body on the car, for some reason, for whatever reason, it made the car a lot more stable. It made the car way more stable in the corners. And I guess, you know, when you look at race cars, they are typically wider. They are lower and they are wider. And the width just gives stability. And that is definitely proven to be the case with this adjustment. So this is something that I probably should have thought of to begin with. But still, it's not going to be easy to improve upon the 6:55 and get that gold time. So end of the first sector here, looking to try and get a 44 on the clock, but we've done better than that, 43.8 with a fast double right, and we've got a nice exit onto this back straight. So this is crucial here, getting a good exit off that turn down this back straight. Probably the fastest, one of the fastest sections on the track, other than the Dottinger, the long straight at the end. All over that curb. We're going to brake nice and early here. This is really easy corner to brake too late. Brake maybe a little bit too late, but not too bad. Dropping down the hill towards the foxhole. Quite a fearsome section of the circuit, and it's the left-right combination at the top, which is where you can really gain and lose a lot of time. And this is where a lot of crashes happen in real life. If you watch the Nürburgring crash compilations, you'll see a lot of crashes at that corner. Very difficult to get right fast and over a crest. At the end of the third split, 1 minute 44.3, and most of the time I was getting 145s, high 145s through there. So we are a good second up, I would say, but it's a case of trying to maintain that through to the end. And we have a very technical section here. I mean, the whole track, to be fair, is very technical. The whole track is a technical section. I'd say this section here especially is an especially technical part of the track. Dropping down the hill, this fast left-right sequence, slight lift through there to keep the car nicely balanced, and I felt like a lot of the time if you lift fully off the throttle it unsettled the car. So I would lift only a slight bit off the power just to keep the car somewhat in balance. So coming out of there, nicely poised, 234 on the clock. Not that that means too much at this point, but I was normally getting 235s through there. So that's an improvement. So I know that I'm up on the lap, but it's a case of bringing it through all the way to the end. Over the crest, a bit of a mini straight here, then into a fast sweeping left into a big braking zone. There's a little blue marker on the track about there, and that's always a good braking marker for this corner. Then a bit of patience mid-turn, then onto the power. Crucial corner that, because you're going to be going uphill for quite a few seconds here, and it's all flat out, so you want to be getting good drive onto this straight to maximise your speed all the way up it. And it does serve as a bit of a break halfway through the lap, which is quite nice because there are no braking points for a good sort of 10, 15, 20 seconds here. And then this section, this corner coming up, very, very difficult to get right, very fast. You have to really commit and carry the speed through, maximise the track limits on the outside. This corner as well, being very brave through there, slight lift, but not too much time lost into this right-hander, all over the curb, keeping it quite narrow. If that's one thing I learnt from Eagle's lap as well, just minimising the distance travelled through the corners by keeping it nice and narrow at times. And through the carousel, let's see what the time is on the exit. 4:03, 4:04, so that's good. Still about 5 seconds away from Eagle's time, but we're definitely going in the correct direction. Rising up the hill into the best part of the track, the fast and flowing sweeping section, as we're going to hit a split timer here. Should be about 4 minutes 25 if we're good, and there it is, 4:25.6. And now we're going to head into the right, double left, right. So this double left here, not quite meeting the curb, but then absolutely abusing the curb on the right hand side, then dropping over this corner here, back down the other side, maximising the track on the left, and then you have this double left, perhaps a bit too much curb use, and then in towards YouTube corner. This one isn't YouTube corner, the next one is. Here we go, this is the camera angle you normally see on those crash compilations, and again another corner where lots of people crash in real life. On this occasion we've got through, 4:59 on the clock after that split. Over the hill, using the full extent of the circuit, then we have the jump coming up. Aim the car towards the left, and then pitch it into the right, keeping the car narrow, a little bit wider than we'd like, but on the power as early as you can, maximising the track once again, early upshift into fifth to keep the torque down as we drop down the hill. Through that section just fine. Then we've got this fast right coming up, onto the brakes, keep the nose in, and actually we've taken that quite nicely, and then another fast open left. And then the mini carousel coming up here on the brakes, get the car in early to maximise the banking. That definitely could have been a tiny bit quicker, but it wasn't too bad. And then the long right-hander leading out onto the Dottinger, keep the car in fourth, all the way to the left here, and then keep over to the right before getting on the power, which naturally brings the car over to the other side. And then it's the long straight at the end of this lap. 6 minutes 8 under the gantry at the beginning of the Dottinger straight. Let's see if we can bring this one home and bring home our 9th gold medal in the time trials. The marshals looking on there. Will I be able to finally impress them at long last? The very stern looking marshals who have not really been impressed with my driving up to this point. We have one big braking zone left to do. As we drop down and back up the hill on the other side, we're looking for the end of the curb on the right, and there it is. Onto the brakes we go, firing it in. We managed to get the car pointed in the correct direction, and with one corner remaining, is it going to be a gold medal? Well, it was never in doubt.